The Fuel Good Factor is sponsored by the One-to-One Diet. Take your first step towards a healthier new you. Order the One-to-One Diet Taster Pack today to discover the delightful range of nutritionally complete products and start your weight loss journey.
The Fuel Good Factor with Michelle Livings.
Yes, welcome to the Fuel Good Factor, serving up news, views and expert opinion from some of the leading figures in nutrition, health and well-being. One sip or episode at a time, as well as bringing you emotional and inspirational stories from the One-to-One Diet Slimmer archive. Today's special guest is Kerry Davies, aka the Sleep Fixer, a leading sleep expert and coach, here to answer all my questions on how to get a good night's rest and how that can affect weight loss and health and well-being in general. And that's also the theme of today's Slimmer story about Donna Mikulski, whose weight was causing sleep deprivation and other dangerous symptoms.
It was leaning on the esophagus and it was hard to swallow and it constricted me, so I couldn't lie down. That's hence the sleep deprivation.
But before we get to all of that fascinating stuff, let's take a quick look at this week's Healthy Headlines.
Healthy Headlines.
And I have gone for sleep-related headlines, especially for our guest. So the first one that caught my attention is the latest TikTok trend for sleep maxing. Now, the average UK adult sleeps apparently for just 6 hours and 24 minutes, according to a 2022 survey. Now, if you want to improve on that, then you might want to try the latest TikTok trend of sleep maxing. So-called sleep influencers share the extreme lengths they go to in pursuit of a good night's sleep. So here is what I'm talking about. Mouth tape being one of them. This apparently encourages nose breathing at night. Chin straps to support your face and reduce double chins while you sleep. I mean, sounds quite good, to be fair. Other sleep maxing tips include reducing screen time, that's what makes sense, avoiding carbs after lunch, eating 2 kiwis a day, and not drinking anything too close to bedtime. I mean, that sort of makes sense because you'd be up all night needing a wee. Experts claim, however, that a lot of this is nonsense. We'll have to ask Kerry in a bit, and could even be harmful, leading to potential orthosomnia. So that's a bit like orthorexia, so with clean eating, but people getting too obsessed with sleep. And then one final headline. More sleep may improve perimenopause symptoms caused by low estrogen. This was from Medical News Today. Past research shows that about 47% of perimenopausal women experience sleep disorders. It's a very common symptom of menopause and perimenopause. Well, a new study recruited 503 participants who self-identified as perimenopausal. Average age was about 44 years old. And they used an at-home hormone monitoring perimenopause hormone kit to track their sleep. I'd love one of those. And at the conclusion, scientists found that study participants who reported sleeping between 6 to 9 hours a night showed significantly higher levels of E3G, which is your estrogen, compared to those who slept between 3 to 6 hours. So that's quite interesting. Could lead to improvements in the treatment, maybe, of menopause.
Healthy Headlines.
And so, with all of that in our sleep headlines, let's move into today's guest. I'm very pleased to say that I'm joined by Kerry Davies, who is a globally recognised CBT eye therapist and sleep coach. She specialises in adult sleep, insomnia, children's sleep and neurodiversity, offering personalised sleep strategies that make a real difference. She's also known for delivering impactful corporate wellness workshops all around the world, helping to boost productivity and promote holistic well-being. So whether you're struggling with sleep or looking to improve your overall health, Kerry has the expertise to guide you. Kerry, welcome.
Hi, lovely to be
How
here.
are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Are you well rested?
Very well rested.
Of course you are, unlike me. I have to say I did not get the best night's sleep last night, so I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. So First of all, I have to ask you, what exactly is a sleep coach?
So basically, people come to me when they're having difficulties with their sleep. I analyse their difficulties, problem solve them, and give them strategies in order to be able to support better sleep.
Right. Okay. And so this wouldn't just be if people are having the odd blip. This would be sort of a consistent issue that somebody's experiencing, would you say?
Yeah, often it's persistent or it's been happening for a long time.
And it's starting to impact people's life.
Yes,
everyday
absolutely,
life.
yeah.
Okay. So I have to then ask, how did you become a sleep coach in the first place? What drew you to the area? Because it's quite a specific...
So I'm going to be completely honest here, right? It wasn't really a decision I made. So I was offered some sleep training 14 years ago.
Right.
And I agreed. So I was previously a nurse. I agreed to do the sleep training, and it turned out it wasn't training, it was a job. So it was a 5-hour-a-week job. So I took it on, started the job, absolutely fell in love with it from day one. The difference that sleep makes to people, I've got thousands of examples. I can't imagine ever doing anything else.
Had you ever experienced any problems with sleep previous to that?
Yeah.
You had?
And I have actually, since being a sleep coach as well. Yeah.
It happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, I go through periods of time where sleep is a little bit more tricky for whatever reason, yeah.
So... I suppose that you said that you fell in love with it. Why are you so passionate about sleep?
Because this changes lives, completely changes lives, changes people's outlooks, can replenish marriages, can really help the whole family, to help people to be more productive at work, achieve what they can achieve their full potential. And I think everybody on this planet should be given the tools to be able to achieve their full potential. So if I can have my part in that, that for me, that's the whole reason I do it. That's the whole reason I love it.
Because you're so right. Sleep really does impact so many different areas of life, especially when it comes to sort of your health and your wellness, doesn't it? Yeah. Because we all know how rubbish we can feel, a bit like I do today. It's not terrible because it's only one night, but I can feel it.
Yeah.
I know I've not had enough sleep. Yeah. And it really has so many different impacts, doesn't it?
Yeah, on every single aspect of physical health, mental health, emotional well-being, from one poor night's sleep to people who haven't slept for maybe 30 years. Everybody has got a story to tell about how sleep is impacting on them personally or their family.
So you've actually met people that have had such chronic insomnia, they've not had a good night's sleep for like 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just incredible. There might be people listening that have even suffered that. Luckily, I've had smaller periods of it, but nothing like that. How do people function?
They become used to it. So it's just the norm. It's the baseline for them. That's how they used to function. They perhaps don't know that there is a solution to their insomnia, or there is a way for it to get better. So what other choice have you got?
You get used to feeling, I think, with all sorts of things, but sleep included, you kind of get used to feeling a bit rubbish.
Yeah.
And that becomes your normal, doesn't it? And you don't even remember how you felt after a great night's sleep or a period of good sleep.
Yeah.
It's really quite frightening. So we know that we do feel better after proper sleep. Even just one good night's sleep, it can make such a difference. So why do we feel better? Why is that?
When we sleep, arguably, our brains and bodies are doing a lot more than actually when we're awake. So when we're sleeping at nighttime, although, physically we're still actually, our bodies and our brains are being replenished and restored in order for us to get up and go about our day the best that we possibly can do. So, the brain is physically like removing any waste from it. We're replenishing all of our mental health processes. Our immune systems are being repaired. Our bodies are being repaired. If we've got little tears in our muscle, that'll be happening. On. Yeah, whilst we're sleeping.
I've read that you kind of alluded to it there. There's almost a process of brain washing.
Yeah.
That's insane, all going on while you're fast asleep.
Yeah. So, if you imagine like a filing system, your brain is kind of putting things into place and then getting rid of the stuff, because our brains cannot hold everything that we see and hear and smell and taste and touch every day. So it has to get rid of some of that stuff. Yeah. So it's keeping the things that we need, getting rid of the stuff that we don't need. So if you're not having enough sleep, that isn't able to happen in the same way.
Of course not. Is that a little bit, I mean, we could go into this for a whole episode, but is that a little bit about what dreams are like, the sort of filing of memories maybe?
Yeah, and the consolidation of memories, processing things that have happened maybe that day, maybe 10 years ago. Yeah, your brain will be processing, and that's where dreams can come from.
Because I had a dream last night, and I can't for the life of me remember now what it is, obviously, but it was definitely something that was to do with my next few days. So it was something where I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So my brain was obviously working. Yeah. But then other times you can have these dreams that make absolutely no sense whatsoever because they are so random and so out there.
Yeah, very abstract.
Yeah, really abstract. So it's weird, isn't it? That it sort of makes sense though if it's something, about what's happening.
Yeah, and it might not make sense to you because it could be something you're processing from 15 years ago, right? So it doesn't make sense anymore. Yeah, like there's no strict order that this happens.
Wow, gosh.
We think.
That's the thing. I mean, the brain is just incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
What goes on. That's so interesting, though, about all the different processes that are happening just while we're having a sleep. So when we don't have a good night's sleep, what does that sleep deprivation look like? How does it manifest itself?
Yeah, this really varies, I think, as well from person to person. And, most people are going to be able to relate to perhaps feeling a bit irritable the next day, I don't, me, even after one poor night's sleep, I can be quite irritable, quite moody. Long-term sleep deprivation, you're likely to become ill more frequently, things will take
infections.
Yeah, and it will take longer to get over that illness as well. Forgetful, so forgetting things. Concentration can be hugely impaired, our productivity, our motivation. So, these things that we need in everyday life to be the best we can be are going to be hugely impacted by sleep deprivation.
Yeah. And also, does it have sort of like an impact even just the next day? You've mentioned about sort of moodiness and being a bit snappy and irritable, which I totally get. But I think a lot of people would say that they sometimes feel a bit more like, on the sugary snacks and the sort of slightly more unhealthy things to eat. And of course, you're trying to mainline coffee as well and caffeine to keep. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of people do.
So the body's clever, right? Our bodies are designed to keep us alive, to keep us going, to keep us safe. So if we haven't had enough sleep, we're low in energy, what are we going to crave?
Food.
Sugary stuff, complex carbohydrates, because that gives you an instant hit of energy, right? And then, the hormones that tell us that we're full, they're kind of depleted when we haven't had enough sleep as well. So it means that you can overeat at the same time. Your brain doesn't tell you when you're full. There's a lot of complex stuff that's going on. Yeah. So it's not just, I haven't slept, I'm going to grab the chocolate biscuits, in your brain. It's craving that in order for you to be able to get through the day. And the same with caffeine as well.
But the problem is with that, of course, and again, I'm sure people can identify with this listening, is that you'll do that and you'll get your hit of sugar and your caffeine. You go, right, okay, yeah, I got this, I can power on. And then a few hours later, sometimes not even, you'll get this God almighty crash in energy where you're then exhausted or snappy again. So why is that happening? What's going on with all that?
That's a sugar crash, isn't it? So because you've had extra, because your body is like telling you that you need extra.
You need it because of
then you're having
sleep.
a bigger sugar crash. And then you repeat, or some people will then repeat that again and again and again, because you know that you've got that period of time where you are actually feeling alert.
So you think, right, I'll give myself another couple hours of a hit and then hopefully I'll just about make it through to the end of the day. It's just a real continuous negative cycle to get yourself in, isn't it? When you're starting the day already from that really low point.
Yeah, from a place of sleep deprivation.
So I'm exhausted even thinking about it, quite honestly. Yeah. And this kind of goes into what I was going to ask you next, because there's a lot of studies suggesting that lack of sleep can make it harder to lose weight. And we've already spoken about that. That's sort of the snacky thing. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Is that true? And if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of studies out there, and I'm happy to give you reference to them that have looked at people who have have remained on the same calories where they're kind of losing weight, but have restricted their sleep a little bit. And actually that weight loss has significantly significantly reduced or stopped.
Wow.
So we know that sleep absolutely supports weight loss because we will overeat. We're going to find it much easier to overeat when we haven't had enough sleep. The brain is going to be driving you to do that. So it's going to be really, really difficult.
Yeah.
I suppose the other element of this as well is like movement and exercise. If you haven't had enough sleep, you're going to lose motivation to do those things.
Of course, and you feel too tired anyway.
Yeah.
You're too exhausted.
Yeah. So you've lost motivation to do that. So it doesn't just impact on the actual food that you're consuming, but actually burning those calories as well.
Really, really interesting. It's just so involved, isn't it? And the more you're talking, the more integral a good night's sleep seems to be on so many different levels, including obviously keeping the weight off.
Yeah, it's vital. So sleep sits with food and water, and that's just
really
basic
does.
food, right? So, and we can actually survive longer without food than we can without sleep.
I was going to ask you about this because I can't remember the figures, so hopefully you'll be able to give us some examples. But it is true, isn't it? If people are properly sleep deprived, as in do not sleep. We're not talking just insomnia here. We're talking about actually if you try and keep somebody awake for I don't know what the time they could die, couldn't they?
Yeah,
from no sleep.
I think the longest this is off the top of my head, but I think the longest recorded is 12 days. And sleep deprivation
and that was
is
with no sleep.
No sleep. And it's used in torture camps. Like it's a well-recognized form of torture.
Horrific.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we could bust some myths around sleep because there are all sorts. Well, some of them we had in the headlines even. I might bring those back out actually for us to talk about because there are so many myths around it. So first of all, we all get told, right, the perfect night's sleep is 8 hours. Is that true? You're shaking your head.
Nonsense.
Right,
Like,
okay.
no, not at all. So the average person is going to sleep between 7 and 9 hours, right? The majority of people.
Yeah.
But that can actually change to between 6 and 10 hours. So I'm going to give you a little hack.
6 and 10?
It's between 6 and
Okay.
10. So some people, the majority is between 7 and 9.
Yeah.
But let me give you a little hack to work out if you're getting enough sleep.
Okay.
So forget your sleep tracker, right? Tune into your own body, right?
Okay.
So mid-morning between 10:30 and 11, check in. How do I feel? How do I feel right now in this moment? If you feel like you've got a good amount of energy, I mean, it doesn't mean you're skipping around the room or anything like that,
No,
but
you
you're
feel
feeling
good.
good, you're feeling okay. That would suggest that you've had enough sleep the night before.
Okay. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking back and today, because it's a little bit later that we're obviously recording this. And so around that time today, definitely, I was all right. I can't say that I wasn't okay, but I definitely had, I don't know, a slight heaviness of my eye, I suppose slightly, which normally I wouldn't have around that time of the day. So that would be an
that you haven't had
indication.
enough. Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. It's a great little test to do. Really, really good. I'm just looking back at some of these headlines because I want to see what. So what about this sleep maxing thing then?
So yeah, again, there's all different forms of it. Like you mentioned the mouth taping.
Yeah.
And like
That sounds like torture as well.
well, you know what? It's not been researched. There's a tiny, tiny research, and it concerns me how many people are talking about it because we do not know if this is safe. Like we don't know if it's safe.
I mean, it doesn't sound it, does it?
It's certainly not something I would recommend. I think it's beautiful to do during the day when you're awake, but I think actually taking away an airway during sleep could be potentially quite dangerous physically and physiologically as well.
Well, particularly if someone's got sleep apnea that they don't know about. I mean,
Exactly.
that's not good, is it, at all?
Yeah.
Chin straps was the other. What about kiwis? Eating kiwis, what's that all about?
Okay, so there was a while ago, there was a thing about bananas as well. I don't know if you remember it. So
bananas,
so it's like the press pick up on something and then like report it
pick a
everywhere.
fruit.
Yeah, they pick a fruit and then say that's going to make
Cherries,
you sleep.
that's another one, isn't it? Cherries, yeah.
But actually, there's a whole host of foods that contain something called tryptophan.
Oh, I've heard of that. Isn't turkey got it in?
Turkey's got it in,
Yeah.
It's an amino acid that converts over to melatonin. So these would be melatonin-rich foods.
And melatonin, just to pick up on that is the sleep hormone, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what signals you to go to sleep.
Right.
So kiwis, they have tryptophan in.
So that's why.
yeah. As do bananas, cherries, turkey, cheese,
okay.
wheat. There's a lot of products. So actually, if you just Google foods that have got tryptophan in,
So that's a
would be-
potential, okay, so there's something maybe in that. What about avoiding carbs after lunch?
No.
No, you're shaking your head on that one.
No.
Wouldn't.
There wouldn't be any research to suggest.
I've heard actually the reverse of that actually if you want a good night's sleep, eat carbs because that will actually give you a better sleep.
Yeah, well, if they're melatonin rich carbs, then they are likely to improve your sleep. The only thing I would say on food is to avoid having a main meal 3 hours before going to bed.
Right.
So you want to allow your body time to metabolize the food before it's got to move on and then help you to sleep, basically. So given that little window, 3 hours is optimal. 2 hours might be okay. But I would opt for 3 wherever possible.
That's really interesting. And so that's just to give your body time to do all its digesting and what it needs to do, so that presumably once you're in bed and you're sleeping, your body can then concentrate on all the other stuff.
Exactly.
Not digesting food. Yeah. Plus, also, I'm sure people have found this, that if you eat too late and then you go and lie down, you get indigestion anyway. Yeah, it's horrible.
It's not very comfortable. That's heavy. That's heavy meals. That's not to say that you can't snack, have a little snack after that.
Maybe a little snack.
But heavy meals, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, and there was that thing when we were talking about this, was it the napping or something?
To have 2 different naps?
Oh, yes. Yeah, the 2 different naps. So there was a 90-minute nap followed by a 30-minute nap. So you have to split your naps.
I think
it seems a bit involved.
Yes, I think there's a lot of stress put on sleep.
Yeah.
And I think the more we put stress on sleep, the more stressful sleep becomes. So if you've come up off a night shift and you're trying to have, I need to have a 90-minute nap and then a 20-minute nap, and you're consciously thinking about these 2 naps that you've got to have,
you're
it's
worrying
put
about it.
A lot more pressure on the sleep that you're getting. So I think sleep is often about really tuning into you. So understanding how it works on a kind of physiological level, but then really finding what works for you. So I think sometimes the advice that's given can be quite damaging because then people can get over-focused on those
it was like
things.
we were talking about that, was it orthosomnia, where I suppose you get so obsessed with your sleep that it becomes so anxiety-inducing that you can't then sleep anyway because too stressful.
Yeah.
Which I guess sometimes the wearables, like, the sleep tracker watches and things, can be maybe a bit of a problem for that. I've got one and I love it and I like seeing how I slept and I do enjoy looking at the data, but and it's like, okay, I that's interesting, but that's where it stops. I don't then get too obsessed about it.
And I think it's knowing you as a person, right? So some people, like yourself, can look at a sleep tracker and go, do you know what? That's
useful.
Really good. I feel like that was a good night last night.
Yeah, it's just useful information.
Whereas somebody else could look at the sleep tracker and think about how much deep sleep they've had, how much REM sleep they've had, how much light sleep they've had.
I do have a little bit of a look at that. But I don't get too obsessed with it. It's interesting.
Panic about that, but without really understanding the physiology of it.
Exactly. And also the whys and everything. And it's going to fluctuate from night to night, isn't it? You can't always have the perfect night's sleep. I'm sure we can aim for it.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. You said you were a nurse.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to deal with doing these sort of night shifts? You didn't have to do...
Oh, night shifts, I did do night shifts, And actually, when I first set up my business, I went back into the nursing world and did some night shifts, and they are awful.
I don't know. I mean, thank goodness we have, especially emergency workers. There's all sorts of people, obviously, people that work in the airline industry as well that are having to do all that. And thank goodness, because we need people to do it, but it must be so detrimental to health long term, and I don't know how you do it. How do you do those all night shifts?
It's really, really hard, actually. I'm talking from a personal experience doing night shift. Even as a trained sleep coach, I was reaching for cans of Coke at 2:00 in the morning, bags of sweets, chocolate, anything just to keep me going.
Yeah, because it's in the moment. You've got, especially as a healthcare practitioner.
Yeah.
I mean, what else can you do?
Yeah, and you've got to have your wits. Yeah, you've got to have your wits about you as well. So it's not even about just being awake. It's about understanding that you've got sick people, right?
Reaction time, you need to be quick. You need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been incredibly hard.
Yeah, I think, and it's hard when you switch, and I think from, night shift onto day shift and that kind of thing can be really tricky.
And just while we were were on the headlines, I will come back to some of the myths in a minute in case you've got some more. But there was that thing about the perimenopause and the sleep and how it gets affected. I think there's a lot of women that would agree that at some point they've had their sleep disturbed when they're going through, you know, the menopause.
Yeah, absolutely. Sleep 100% is affected by almost everybody who goes through menopause at some point. But then almost everybody in general is going to have sleep issues at some point. So it's how you can manage those in the best way.
But it was interesting, I thought there, how they're saying that in people or the women that were sleeping more and maybe not so affected, they actually had higher estrogen levels when they were measured. So that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and this 6 hour that the study mentioned really is a benchmark in the sleep world for any of the long-term implications of sleep deprivation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so if you're looking at cardiovascular, diabetes, obesity, a lot of the research data shows this under 6 hours to be a real kind of tricky time with maximum impact on your sleep overall.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So really, if you're getting 6 hours is the one to try and get over your 6 hours.
Yeah, bare minimum.
Don't worry too much about the 8 hour one.
Yeah.
But if you can get over 6, you're doing well.
Yeah.
And it's the thing to aim for. That's really, really interesting. So are there any other myths? Because obviously I asked about the 8 hour thing. Any other myths about sleep that you can bust for us? I'm sure you've got loads.
Yeah, there's a few. Cheese gives you nightmares.
Oh, yeah, does it?
No.
Oh.
It doesn't. Cheese contains tryptophan, actually.
Oh, so it's good.
So it's a good, yeah. But the fact that you think that cheese is going to give you nightmares is likely to be what gives you the nightmares. I suppose the other one is like the older people, whatever you class as older people, don't need as much sleep.
I've heard this, and I have to say that my mum, who is older, she definitely doesn't sleep as much these days, and she will often find herself, say, waking up quite early. She'll fall asleep, but then she'll wake up really early. So, okay, talk about that.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
Over the age of 50, and like as you get older, your sleep architecture changes, right?
What's that? What's sleep architecture?
So how sleep works. So predominantly, just as a really simple example, most adults are likely to sleep 3 to 4 hours in a chunk. Yeah. And that's where the majority of the deep sleep occurs. So we have deep sleep, we have light sleep, and we have REM sleep.
Yeah.
So the deep sleep occurs in that first chunk. We then move into our kind of second chunk of sleep, if you like, where the majority of the REM sleep is. So our dream sleep and light sleep. And we're kind of that sleep is more fragmented. So we're in and out of sleep cycles. You can wake up, check your environment, maybe wake up, go to the toilet, go back to sleep. As we age, the deep sleep starts to decline. So we start to get less deep sleep. We get more of the light sleep. So the sleep naturally becomes more fragmented, but from an earlier point in the night.
So I suppose the key there is, don't worry too much about that, because it is actually quite a natural progression for sleep. So rather than panicking, because sometimes my mum will get quite worried, this has happened. Yeah. But it's actually quite natural.
It's quite normal.
What's the best thing to do if you do wake up really early and say it's too early to be getting up and doing things? What would you recommend?
Yes, there's a few things that I recommend. But the very first thing I will say is to check your environment. Okay, so the environment plays a real crucial role in being able to stay asleep the whole way through the night. That's why people sleep with things like earplugs and eye masks. We want the environment to stay exactly the same from when you first fall asleep to when you wake up in the morning. Hence why lots of babies have white noise machines, because what that provides is, from a sound perspective, the same sleep environment.
I haven't heard of that. So white noise playing for babies. Does that work for adults as well?
Yeah, I recommend it to many adults who struggle to consolidate sleep through the night, particularly if you live in an area that is particularly noisy. So either noisy when you're first going to sleep, or perhaps noisy in the middle of the night that's waking you up. So what you want to do is provide the brain with a sound that stays exactly the same all night, because if the sound changes, that can alert your system to go, right, you need to wake up, check you're safe, before you then go back to sleep again.
How interesting. I've actually not heard of that one before. So that's really, really good. Alcohol. Just want to ask you this, because a lot of people, I'm coming back to the myths here, a lot of people will say a nightcap. That's what you need. And a lot of people will say, well, you know what, if I have a little drop of something, whether it's the glass of wine or a little hit of whiskey or whatever it is, before bed, sleep like a baby. Is that true?
Yeah. Alcohol is a real tricky little fish. So alcohol will sedate us.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we
it
will
makes you
feel
go,
sleepy.
you will feel sleepy.
Okay.
You will fall to sleep. Okay. So that, give alcohol credit where credit's due. It's going to do
right.
that. However,
That's a plus.
however, what alcohol does do is it does a real job on your REM sleep. So this
Your
is the
dream sleep.
dream sleep. It's where all your emotions are being processed, right? So hence where a hangover comes from. So a hangover is in fact sleep deprivation plus dehydration.
Is it?
Hence why we can be irritable, we can be moody, all of those things are sleep deprivation. It's not a hangover, it's because our REM sleep has been affected by the alcohol.
Right, very interesting. So it kind of leads me nicely into the big question of how can we improve the quality of our sleep? And there's going to be so much here, I'm sure. What do we need to do ultimately to change about our lifestyle or our routines? Because I'm sure that's where we've got to start. There are things that we can do even before we go into the bedroom that can help.
Okay, so as a starting point, which is probably not where you're expecting me to go, but it's where I start with everybody I work with, is the first thing to look at is your morning wake-up time. Okay.
Oh, so it actually starts when you wake up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So we start with the morning wake-up time. How consistent are you with your morning wake-up time?
Okay.
How much does that deviate from day to day?
Well, I'm thinking probably people listening as well. If you're getting up for work, you're probably getting up at a very similar time every day or getting the kids to school or whatever you're having to do. But I'm thinking most people will, at the weekends, probably try and make up for a bit of that and have a good old lie-in at the weekend.
Yeah. So the reason that I say we start with the morning is because in order to sleep, we've got our circadian rhythm that most people have heard of,
Your
right?
body
The
clock,
internal
isn't it?
body
Yeah.
clock, But we also build sleep pressure, okay?
Right.
So sleep pressure starts to build from when you wake up in the morning. So I would encourage anybody listening to this to think about their sleep the opposite way. So think about how long does your body take to prepare you to go to sleep at nighttime? How long do you have to be awake for before you feel tired?
Right. Well, today, not very long. But yeah, that's an interesting
So
question.
in general, if you're...
When do you start feeling sleepy?
Yeah, so if your sleep pressure takes 17 hours to build, right? Let's just say. If you then are waking up at 6:30 in the week, okay, but then at the weekend you wake up at 8:30, let's say, you still take 17 hours to prepare to go to sleep.
Yep.
Which means that sleep is going to become difficult at nighttime.
When you normally go to bed.
When you would normally go to bed.
So you're still feeling awake when you need to be going to bed, which could be very problematic, say, on Sunday night.
Yes.
If you've then got to get up on Monday morning for work.
Yeah, which is something that I see daily.
Really?
Is Sunday night. And a lot of people will think about Sunday night as the dread. So the dread of starting the week ahead.
Well, you're already, probably not looking forward to some things because it's Monday and it's the start of the week and there might be things you've got to deal with. But if you're then adding the worry that I don't feel tired enough.
Yeah, and physiologically you're not ready to go to sleep because you've had that additional 2 hours sleep in the morning.
Gosh,
and often when we unpick, look at people's sleep and we unpick it, that's where the Sunday night comes from. It's very rarely about going to work the next day. It's because I'm not tired when they're going to bed. So what are you going to do if you're laying in bed with nothing to do, trying to will yourself to go to sleep? Your brain's gonna...
Yeah, your brain's going and you put the telly on maybe or you scroll through social media, do a bit of doom scrolling. Yeah. It's always candy, isn't it?
And then if you end up on an app that's got an amazing algorithm and keeps you well tuned in, then you've lost a good couple of hours.
So really interesting. So the first thing is wake up time, keep it consistent. Even at weekends, for example, even on holiday, I suppose.
Yeah, although, the majority of the time, if you really want to have a lay-in, do it on a Saturday night. Because if you can't go a Saturday morning, if you can't go to sleep on a Saturday night, It's not going to have a big deal. You know,
Most
it's not going to have a
people
big
are out
impact.
on the Raz anyway, so it's fine.
I'm 43. There's no out on the Raz anymore here. but most people, you know,
You're not going to worry.
Yeah, if you're getting a shorter sleep from a Saturday night through to a Sunday morning, it's not going to have a big impact on your day on the Sunday. However, if you're starting on a Monday morning from a place of sleep deprivation,
it's not good start
that's
to the week.
likely to feed into the rest of the week. Yeah.
Okay, so what about as the day wears on then? What other lifestyle-y things can we do to prepare for a good night's sleep?
Couple up the morning with bright light exposure, 5 minutes of natural daylight.
I do actually do this when I can.
It's autumn now, right? So
it's hard.
It's going to be harder because the mornings are dark. But there's only one product that I really recommend for sleep, and that is a SAD lamp or a daylight lamp.
I do actually have one. I'll be honest with you. I do. It was a birthday present from my mum, and I absolutely love it. I don't use it so much in the summertime, but I do throughout the winter time. Can you just explain why is getting, well, that's obviously not daylight, but it simulates daylight. Why is getting daylight early important?
So that sends a message into the pineal gland, right? So the pineal gland is located within the brain. This is what releases and suppresses melatonin.
Right.
When we have bright light exposure, so it's actually blue-green light.
Yep.
So, you know, what they talk about with electronics. When we have that bright light exposure, it sends a message into that gland to suppress the melatonin, which then helps you to kickstart your day with your daytime hormones. So it like almost speeds up that process, starts building that sleep pressure that you so desperately need, which then helps you to fall asleep at night.
So it's really giving you that signal of it's time to wake up.
Yeah.
It's time to be active.
Yeah. And bodies start preparing for sleep. So although you're not thinking about sleep, right, when you first wake up, your body is now starting
because it's
to
now,
prepare.
right, I'm awake now, so it's almost doing the calculations and then going, right, okay, so I've got a few hours. Interesting. So that's a really important one and quite an easy one. If it is cloudy or it's still dark when you get up, for example, this morning I got up very early and it was still dark, the sun wasn't up. Can you just switch lights on?
You can switch lights on. It will take a lot longer for that exposure. The SAD lamp will synthetically give you
because
daylight.
It's more, it's brighter.
Yeah, but if it's cloudy outside, that's fine. It's only if the sun hasn't risen. So if the
so
sun's
you can
risen,
still go out cloudy and it will still work.
Yeah.
You don't have to have sun. And I'm presuming you do not look directly in the sun.
No.
That's not the
No,
point,
it's just
is
being
it?
out
being
in
out. So being outdoors is probably good throughout the day anyway, isn't it?
Absolutely.
To help with
that would have been exactly where I'd move on to actually.
Okay.
So it's not just front loading this, right? Spreading this out during the day. So it's like you're constantly, so if you get out repeatedly throughout the day into natural daylight, you're sending that constant reminder to the body, oh, it's still daytime, still daytime, still daytime.
Yeah.
And it really helps this is what helps to set the circadian rhythm, which is like the little inbuilt computer system that we've got going on in our bodies.
So it's very, very interesting. So anything else during the day, lifestyle-wise, that we can do?
Meal times.
Yes, well, you spoke earlier about not eating a main meal within about 2 to 3 hours of going to bed.
Yeah, keeping similar meal times throughout the day.
Oh, okay.
So the circadian rhythm is our body clock.
Yeah.
Relies really heavily on us feeding it information. So the more that we feed it the same information day in, day out, the more it can automate those processes. It controls our sleep and wake cycle. It controls our metabolizing of food as well. So if we are giving it really clear, concise messages around when we eat and when we sleep, the body will then automate that. And most people can, recognize that if you're having lunch at, say, 12 noon every day, your body, if you've fed it that information for a period of time, your body will then tell you at about 11:45,
time for lunch.
Come on, it's time to eat. So it will make your stomach rumble, might make you feel a bit dizzy.
So clever.
And that's your body saying to you, you've trained me to do this, so now give it. And the same can work with sleep. Yeah.
Which is quite interesting. What about exercise? I presume exercise can help sleep.
Yep. Yeah. So exercise and movement.
Oh, okay.
So just doing an hour's exercise is probably going to be less beneficial than if you were moving repeatedly throughout the day and then doing maybe half an hour exercise. So it's about, this really helps to boost sleep pressure. So the more that we move, the more that the sleep pressure builds. Okay. So when we exercise, this helps to build sleep pressure. When we move, it helps to build sleep pressure.
Right.
So I always suggest to people, like on most watches, it will remind you, get up and move.
10 minutes before the hour, stand up. It'll probably go off in a minute.
Yeah. And I always say, listen to it. Just stand up and take a few
wander.
steps, walk up and down the stairs, or, wherever you are. And that consistent movement is really going to help with sleep. Now, there is research to also suggest that when you exercise in the morning, it helps you to fall asleep initially. When you exercise in the afternoon, it helps you to remain asleep. So it can be quite a useful tool to direct your exercise depending
on what you need to do.
Yeah.
Well, if you need both, you're going to have to do 2 sets of exercise, aren't you? A bit of morning, bit in the afternoon. So is there anything else we can do just before we move on? Or do you think we've covered everything? Would you say there's anything lifestyle?
There's so much.
She's looking at me to say, what do you mean? Is there anything else? Of course there is.
There's so much.
Just give us another one or two before we move on.
I'll give you the one that I think I probably speak the most about. Okay. And this is stress.
Yes. How could we forget stress?
Yeah. It's the number one
thing.
thing.
It's a nightmare, isn't it? For so many things.
So there's a couple of things that I would say that I'm talking to people about every single day. Okay. And mostly related to stress. And it's about how you can leave kind of your day with your day and move into your nighttime. Right,
without
taking it with you, because this is what happens for so many people. It blurs over. So I often will speak to people about ending your day. So be it your work day, doing it before you leave the office. If you're working from home, doing it before you're starting your evening. Look at your day the next day. What are your priorities? What have you got to do? Have you written everything down? Have you written the things down that are in your head? Because if you haven't, your brain's going to continue to remind you.
I do that. I try and do my list of what I need to do for tomorrow, but I've written it down and I know it's on a piece of paper so I can forget about it.
Yeah, and it really helps your brain to switch off when you do that. Really, really, really helps
so
your
naturally
brain.
Just doing something that...
Yeah, and I always say to finish off with like things that have gone really well for you. What's gone really well for you in your day? Yeah. So you can like end your day with a nice, neat bow. Right, so you leave the day for the day, and then you go in and start the evening. And the second thing that I think people find really difficult is, in fact, the hardest question I ever ask anybody is, how do you relax? Nobody, in the history of asking people, I don't think anybody has come back and said, I do X, Y, and Z, right? Most people are like, and it takes a long time. Yeah. And then, if you read about sleep, it's about make sure you have this wind down routine before you go to bed.
Yes, a bedtime routine.
And you put in a lot of focus on relaxation.
Then you end
bedtime.
Up worrying about it. It's like we were talking about earlier.
I would say, how can you steal moments throughout the day where you can just spend 5 minutes relaxing? And that might be it might be putting on your favourite song. Might be taking a few deep breaths. It might be using some essential oils. It might be going outside and looking at daylight, but doing that regularly throughout the day. So when it comes to nighttime and it comes to that relaxation, you don't need to spend an hour and a half doing it because you're in quite a nice relaxed state because you've done these little snippets.
So what you're saying is try, and it's not always possible, obviously, because that's what life's like. But if you can, try to take some little, almost like relaxation snacks, if you like, throughout the day.
Yeah.
Just to try and keep, I suppose, the stress levels down in the first place as best you can.
Yeah, like I've got a little essential oils blend on my desk. And if I'm busy back-to-back, calls, sometimes I can have maybe 7 or 8 calls back-to-back and 30 seconds in between. So I might just rub in the essential oils and have a quick sniff of them before I go to the next one. And it's not a lot. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it really helps me to breathe again.
Which is a key one, isn't it? Yeah, that's I like that tip. That's really nice because essential oils do, don't they? Straight away you get that like southern spa feeling straight away. Really lovely tips. Well, we'll chat some more, but I just want to pause for a moment to hear this week's Slimmer story because I think it's one actually you're going to be interested in, Kerry. This is Donna Mikulski, who recently won the One-to-One Diet's Transformation of the Year award, and she's talking about her battle with sleep deprivation and weight loss.
To avoid the pain and fear of suffocation brought on by her weight, And rather than wanting to worry her loved ones, Donna would ride the night bus to keep awake.
It was like you could distract yourself, watch the sceneries as the bus drives by, and just take the longest route that you could find until it was time for me to start my day again. So 25 stones, and it wasn't manageable. It became not manageable. To lie down, it was leaning on the esophagus, and it was hard to swallow, and it constricted me, so I couldn't lie down. That's hence the sleep deprivation.
Surviving on minimal sleep and trying to hold down her 9-to-5 job, Donna knew the time had come to ask for help.
I was flicking through TikTok and I found Deborah on the one-to-one diet. As she opened the door, I could see she could just read me like a book. She introduced me to a whole another world, a whole community, and we cheer each other on. We have a group chat.
Celebrating being 9 stone 8 pounds lighter, Donna no longer rides the night bus to escape her evening torture.
I've regained strength, just feeling betterment in my life. You take for granted, I can walk. I like to walk, and I appreciate the night buses. It's a relief that I don't have to do it anymore. It was an experience, it was a journey. At the same time, I'm happy just to leave that behind now.
My goodness me, poor Donna. I can't believe what she was doing on night buses. Because she couldn't sleep. I mean, that's really chronic sleep deprivation. Have you seen something like that?
I wouldn't say anything to that extent, you know, and that's not just sleep, there's a lot of anxiety involved in that as well.
Yeah.
And anxiety, we know, has this really toxic relationship with sleep. They're so bad, like there's such a bad combination together, and they both really snowball the other one. I just wish I'd have known Donna.
I know, but I mean the transformation and the thing is, as she was saying, she was obviously having sleep deprivation because of the physical symptoms of the weight, the extra weight that she was carrying, and the fact that it was literally pressing on the esophagus, not being able to breathe properly. Of course you can't sleep. So that's sort of the sleep apnea type thing coming in. So the fact that she's lost such an incredible amount of weight, I mean, goodness me, has just transformed her sleep.
Yeah. It's incredible, isn't it, really, for somebody to be experiencing that day in, day out. And she must have been in such a terrible place. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and the fact that she was continuing her 9-to-5 job, carrying, like you said, you do survive. You don't know how they do it, but you do.
Yeah.
The people manage to do it, which is just an incredible story. If you were to work, obviously you said you'd wish you'd met Donna, but if you were to work with someone like Donna, could you give us a sense of sort of the process that you would go through to sort of help someone like Donna?
Yeah, so my very first thought, right, when I saw the video was, you don't need to lay down. So if laying down to go to sleep is what's causing you to feel so panicked, why not sleep sitting up?
Which I suppose is kind of what she was doing, sitting on a bus, except she went to the extreme of sitting on a night bus, which is a bit distracting.
And having some, sitting up and watching the telly, something that she's watched before to help to reduce that anxiety. That would be my start. That would be my starting point.
Because some people say, no television at night, no television in the bedroom. But you would say that if something's going on like that, then actually don't worry too much.
100%. This is why sleep is so personal, right? Because for most people, the last thing I would be saying is sleep sitting up in the living room watching a film, right?
Maybe not.
But for Donna, looking at that, it's really important. How can we get Donna some sleep? Yeah. And what is going to be most comfortable for her? So sitting up would have probably, there's this is where I get quite frustrated with the sleep world, because there's so many, you must not do this.
Yes,
you must not do that.
No screens.
Yeah, no screens. You must sleep in a bed.
No noise.
How do we get sleep, first of all? Because however we can get sleep, that's always a great starting
point. Some sleep is better than none.
Absolutely.
So let's just start there.
Absolutely. And really think about that person's personal circumstances, because that is so important.
With a lot of these podcasts, it's interesting that you've even said how personal sleep is as well, and there's not just one rule for everybody, because that seems to have been a theme with the episodes that I've done so far. Everybody is talking about personalised.
Yeah.
It's all personalised. It's what you're unique and it's what works for you. There's advice, but but I suppose that's why it's so important speaking to an expert like yourself on this, because you can then pick out the bits of advice that work for individuals, can't you?
Yeah. And I suppose as an expert as well, there's been, particularly in the sleep world, which is obviously the world that I know about the most, there's been so many messages that have just been pushed out there, like this 8-hour night, like no TVs before bed. It's been pushed out there so much for so long that it's like trying to claw that back in and tell people, that's not what you need to do. It is what has to make it personal. So there are things that are going to work for everybody, like getting outside in the morning with daylight, darkening the environment at night. That's generic. That's going to work for people. But it's the nuances within person to person.
So is there anything else again, if you were dealing with someone that had the problem that Donna did, apart from the sleeping upright, maybe a little bit of television to relax, take the anxiety away, any other help? What other things would you do in the process for her?
Yeah, I think possibly looking at CBTI for her actually would.
Could you just explain CBTI?
Yeah.
I've heard of CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, but what's the I?
Insomnia.
Okay.
So it's specific for insomnia. It's a 6 to 8 week program, basically,
I see.
That's specific to insomnia. Very, very structured sleep plan that focuses first of all on quality of sleep, secondary quantity of sleep. And it's about reprogramming the brain, basically, around thoughts, dysfunctional beliefs around sleep, which so many people have got.
Gosh, really, really interesting. And then would you also, as part of that, sort of introduce some lifestyle measures as well, a bit like we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
Sort of, I suppose, we saw with Donna losing the weight made a massive difference to her. I mean, that was a big thing, wasn't it? So getting on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Lifestyle choice. And I always say to people, that I work with, always start small, right? So we start with these really tiny lifestyle choices, just maybe
little tweaks.
Yeah, maybe just going outside with your coffee.
That's
or
what I do
tea
in the
in
morning. I'm with my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I try, if it's not raining, and even if it is, I open the door and sit there in the patio.
Yeah.
Patio door open. And I'm sure neighbours, especially in the winter, they must think I am mad because I'm there in like my winter coat, sat outside, wrapped up with my cup of tea, trying to get
should join
daylight. But that's it. But you're right. That is, and if it's a sunny day, you only need about 5 minutes, don't you?
Yeah.
Even.
And I think with sleep, it's about, I try and come away from you've got to do this, and this, right, to go to sleep, because it just puts such an enormous amount of pressure. So it's like, right, what can we do that's hard hitting right now? And then how can we build upon it? And I can take my biggest successes, right? So when I speak to my clients, when we're coming towards the end of our coaching sessions or the program, the biggest successes are the ones that say, do you know what? I can't even remember exactly what I did because it just happens now.
And they're suddenly having a good night's sleep.
Yeah. And they've got their notes, but they don't have to look at their notes anymore. They don't have to remember what they need to do because sleep is just happening, because fundamentally it's a biological process. So sleep will find you. It's all of the effort and all of the stress that we put into sleep that changes how it works for a lot. And then obviously hormones and medical conditions and things play into it.
There's always going to be other things at play. So you would again and have a look at all of that, I presume, when you're working with somebody as well, and take all of that into account and build a more holistic sort of view of somebody. Because it's not just about, you're not sleeping. Oh, well, what you need to do is don't do that, and do that. Yeah. It's really not.
It's how can I help to make sleep easy for you?
For you. Yes, that's the crucial bit. Well, our time together is nearly up, unfortunately. I'd love to carry on talking. There's so much we could get into. But I suppose, what would be your message to anyone like Donna who's listening out there, maybe experiencing similar issues, or, just having a problem with sleep at the moment, or one final tip or some advice that you could give us?
Please reach out for support. Please read, and I'm not just saying to anybody, because sometimes when we're in the world of sleep deprivation, it can be a really lonely and isolating place.
In the middle of the night.
Yeah, 3 o'clock in the morning is the loneliest place to be, especially when you're trying to keep on top of not watching TV and not going on your phone. You know,
exactly.
and
'Cause
berating
screens are
yourself.
bad for you.
Yeah.
What you're supposed to do, read a book, I suppose you could try.
Yeah.
Not with a bright light, though.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's such a lonely place to be.
Yeah, it
and
is.
there really is a wealth of help out there, you know, things that you can access to improve your sleep that aren't going to be hard, that aren't going to take over your life, that aren't going to make you change everything that you're doing.
Or necessarily cost you loads and loads of money,
Yeah.
even like you're saying about the daylight
Yes,
thing. I mean, that's
absolutely. It doesn't have
cost-free.
to cost. It doesn't have to cost a fortune to
Yeah.
do these things, and there really are ways. And then one
Of
final
course.
thing:
Yes,
electronics,
please.
because we've alluded to these
Yeah, go on.
electronics
Yeah.
throughout. And I just wanted to say that there's a lot of research now that's suggesting that electronics are not the most damaging thing to sleep.
Really? Because
Really.
we have heard that the whole phone thing and it's the blue light is really, really bad.
It's less about the blue light and more about the information that's being consumed.
Right.
So we all know the apps that draw
Yeah,
us
we
in
do.
and keep us there, right?
4 hours if you were to let it.
We know what they are.
Yeah,
Avoid
scrolling
them.
away.
Avoid them. If you're watching Friends that you've watched 15
yeah.
times already, that's
And it-
really
and it makes you
unlikely.
giggle.
It's really unlikely to have an impact on your sleep. So don't berate yourself.
Yeah.
Every person I speak to starts
I
the
know I shouldn't,
call.
but-
I know I
Yeah.
shouldn't, but I'm looking
So
at my
it's
phone.
not so much the screens, it's the content.
Yeah. And a real easy tip for phones, iPads, laptops.
Yeah.
There's a setting within the accessibility features called grayscale.
Yeah.
It changes it to black and white. It makes it boring. And
Oh.
you don't want to stay on your phone.
I thought you were going to say to switch it to the red light because I do that with my phone. It has like a reddish filter.
Oh no, black and white's even better.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that. So you go into settings and do grayscale.
Grayscale, it's when it's out, you turning the colour filters off. So it takes all the colour away from the phone.
Brilliant.
The phone becomes boring. And it's also a reminder that you're not meant to be on it.
What
Or
a
you
good
don't want to be on
idea.
it,
So
yeah.
would you recommend switching to that, say, at night?
Yeah,
just
I
at
do.
a certain time?
I do. I charge my phone the opposite side of my bed. So
Oh,
it's
do you? I
not
was going to
an
ask
arm-
for a few tips just before
Yeah.
we are going to finish this, but I
Yeah.
have to just ask you, what are your things that you actually do? What's your protocol?
Yeah, so my phone's the other side of the bed.
Yeah.
On charge. So, and I've got a charger that you have to stand your phone on.
Okay.
So that I can't hold it with the cable.
Right.
Alarms in the morning, I set them for 2 minutes apart.
Yeah.
So if I do snooze, it
Yeah.
goes off again 2 minutes later.
Because otherwise the snooze is about 8 minutes long or something.
which means you can
It's
get
far too
back
long.
into a sleep cycle.
frequently.
And you feel terrible,
Yes.
really terrible. I always do switch off my day. I always switch from day mode to night mode. That's a really crucial part
How do you
of
do
my
that?
routine. By looking at my priorities the next day, really putting that to bed. So when
Yeah.
I'm in home mode, I'm in home mode. I'm
Right.
not thinking about work. I'm not thinking about all the things I've got to
Okay.
do. And I turn like notifications off on my business, like social media, and
Yeah.
after 6, 7 o'clock at night usually. Wake up pretty much the same time every day. Bright light in the morning.
Yeah.
I do watch TV in bed.
Good for you.
Before I go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I sleep absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And if I'm stressed and my sleep's impacted, I understand that that's normal. And that's another really valid point for the listeners, actually, that stress impacts on sleep. Undoubtedly, it's going to the cortisol levels rise, which knock off your melatonin, make it hard to sleep. If you're in a period of acute stress, your sleep is going to be affected. What's going to continue that is if you try to do too much about it. So just be a bit more standoffish. Trust that your body will step back into gear when your stress reduces.
Right.
And it will.
And then maybe do a few things to try and at least mitigate the stress a little bit. Would you
Yeah.
say sort of a little bit of, I don't know, breath work or
Yeah.
anything like that?
So go back to that question.
Yeah.
How do I feel relaxed? What makes me feel relaxed? Lean into
Even
that.
if it's something small.
Even if it's something small.
Yeah. If people want to find out more about what you do, or maybe even to come to you for some advice, where can they find you?
So I'm on Instagram
Yeah.
and Facebook as the Sleep Fix, or I'm on LinkedIn.
But with
as-
your notifications off at night, clearly.
I'm at LinkedIn. I'm Kerry Davies on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And then my website is thesleepfixer.com.
Sleep Fixer.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, it's been fascinating talking to you. Such great advice there. So thank you so much, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, thank you. Lovely to meet you.
See you soon. Well, that was just so informative. I really, really enjoyed that conversation with Kerry. And there's certainly a few tips in there that I shall be trying out for myself. Well, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. And thanks again to today's guest, Kerry Davies, the sleep fixer. And you can find all her links along with the information on everything else that we've covered in the show notes. Don't forget to get in touch with us on the socials so that we can give you a shout out in the future. And do please like and subscribe on your favourite podcast platform and tell us what you would like to hear in future episodes of the show. That is it for today. Please do stay healthy, get some sleep, and I'll see you next time for another episode of The Feel Good Factor.